Hello, my name is Orla and I'm the Vice President for Research, Innovation and Impact here at University College Dublin. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here to the launch of the UCD Strategy for Research, Innovation and Impact to 2024, Shaping the Future. I'll shortly give a brief introduction to the strategy, and this will be followed by two panel discussions focusing on its key elements. Before that, it's a great pleasure to introduce Simon Harris TD, Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science.
I'd like to congratulate UCD on the launch of this ambitious research, innovation and impact strategy, Shaping the Future. UCD is a leader in the research and innovation area, and it's at the forefront of our national effort in finding solutions to our most challenging issues. This has been a year like no other. It's tested all of us in different ways and no one is unaffected. The higher education sector has also been tested and not found wanting. Not only were you able to maintain teaching and learning in radically challenging circumstances, but you also demonstrated the flexibility to meet urgent needs. In particular, UCD researchers across many disciplines demonstrated the importance of research and scientific evidence in tackling this pandemic, and how investments made over many years were key in enabling the research community to respond so quickly to the challenges posed by COVID-19. As we emerge from the worst of this pandemic, we're all looking to the future. Whether it's shaping the future with UCD or shaping our future with Science Foundation Ireland, we're all on the same page. Building capacity and capability of the research and innovation system through excellence, impact, and in particular people, and creating the right environment within which research and innovation can flourish is key. As you will be aware, our current National Research and Innovation Strategy, Innovation 2020, has come to a close. It is now the responsibility of my new department to oversee the development of the next National Research and Innovation Strategy. It's a very exciting time to be setting out a vision for where we want to be towards the end of this decade. We know the challenges such as climate change, digitalisation and public health, but we also know the role that research and innovation plays and will play in not only finding solutions to these issues, but also identifying opportunities across these areas. Alongside the development of our new national strategy, my department will be spearheading a national conversation on the role of research and innovation, and we'll be reaching far and wide to engage civic society on this topic. I hope to be announcing the launch of this initiative in the coming weeks, and I really look forward to engaging with UCD on this exciting agenda. A key concern of mine, and I've no doubt that it will resonate with this audience, is that we talk a good talk, but we've not provided adequate public funding for research over the past number of years. If we do not address this, we risk undermining many years of excellent research, stopping our researchers and our higher education institutions from reaching their full potential and hampering our ambitions to be a knowledge-driven economy. I am determined to address this. As you're no doubt acutely aware, the right supports need to be available in order for strategies to be brought to life, to be fully implemented and for ambitions to be realised. My officials and I have invested time and effort and will continue to do so to articulate that need to increase funding for research and innovation to support our recovery from this pandemic and to enable Ireland to meet the challenges of the present and of the future head on. I see the review of the National Development Plan later this year as being a key opportunity to increase funding for research and innovation, which will in turn equip the national ecosystem with the capacity to maximise other funding opportunities, in particular under Horizon Europe. My vision is to see us become an innovation island, with my department providing direction on strategy, funding and structural reform for the research and innovation ecosystem and regional and national linkages with enterprise, in particular our SMEs. The ambition of Innovation 2020 to be a global innovation leader remains as relevant as ever. An island of talent, unleashing the contribution and cooperation of our higher education and FET system and our lifelong learning. An international island, promoting Ireland as a leader in higher education and research. And an island of inclusion and engagement, driving equity of educational outcomes, social cohesion, and a contribution of our education and research institutions to tackling some of the greatest policy and societal challenges of our day. I am delighted to see that UCD's research and innovation strategy complements this vision. And I've no doubt that in delivering on shaping the future, you will not only strengthen research and innovation within your own institution, but you will play a key role at a national and international level in shaping the future. I really look forward to continuing to work with the research community in UCD as we work to build a brighter future together. I wish you all the best as you bring this exciting new strategy to life. Gurv Míle Maith.
By using this research and showing it, we are really changing the landscape of how people view this disease themselves. That stigma on obesity is preventing people seeking help. So what we want to do is change that paradigm. We've started a conversation in wider Irish society thinking of obesity as a chronic disease and destigmatizing it so that we can help the most vulnerable.
This is a history that in many ways is well known in the literature, and yet it hasn't been subject of a scholarly study, and ours is the first of its kind. Our project took this research and we were keen to bring these findings to large audiences who were perhaps unaware of the crisis of mental health in prisons in Ireland and elsewhere. Probably one of the most significant impacts for me was the impact that we had on the individuals. Really had a positive impact on their own health, their own well-being, and reconnecting with family members and people who they had lost contact while they were in prison.
We've deployed artificial intelligence with a view to detecting and preventing elder financial abuse. Elder financial abuse is very serious, so with a view to protecting them and their family, we're delighted that this AI is deployed so successfully within a very sophisticated and major financial institution.
The online tool, what it does is centralizes information that otherwise will be sitting in different browsers online. It brings all environmental data into a single platform.
It's brought it from something that would take a number of weeks to do down to simply 5-10 minutes. It's a really big step forward in terms of technology and an advancement in environmental analysis in Ireland.
This highlights the areas where you have more vulnerable natural assets that need protecting, and in doing that it's actually steering development away to other locations that might be more suitable and obviously lead to least environmental harm.
And so part of what me and my team have been looking at is developing more advanced ways, more technically accurate ways of assessing wind conditions and designing for them. Traditionally, we have used the wind tunnel test as a means of determining the wind effects on buildings, on structures, on vehicles, on airplanes. My team are looking at the use of computational fluid dynamics. From a society point of view, everyone will benefit.
Thank you, Minister, for those very positive and important words. As the Minister pointed out there, by a happy coincidence, our strategy Shaping the Future has arrived at almost the same time as the recently launched Science Foundation Ireland strategy Shaping Our Future, showing indeed that we are all on the same page. This is a really interesting time for research and innovation nationally, with the formation of the new Government Department for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. I know that Minister Harris and his officials have big plans for research and innovation nationally, and we look forward to playing a key part in these. Following on then from the Minister's remarks, we saw some of the winners of the 2020 UCD Research Impact Case Study Competition, giving a sense of the breadth and the reach of research across UCD. The strategy that we are launching today sits in the context of the UCD strategy for 2020 to 24, Rising to the Future. That strategy charted the way forward for the university across all dimensions of our activities. Shaping the Future, then, outlines specifically how we are going to meet the ambitions for research and innovation that were laid out in Rising to the Future. We are launching this strategy at an extraordinary time for research and innovation. We are seeing daily the very best of what research and innovation can deliver for the world as they lead us out of the COVID-19 pandemic. On the other hand, this period has also been a hugely difficult one for most researchers, who've been seeking to progress their research while dealing with all the many demands of this time at work and at home. In presenting this strategy, we are conscious of these demands and of the extraordinary commitment that our researchers have been called upon to deliver, but we're also looking beyond the current circumstances to a brighter time. We want to build on what we have learned during this time of challenge so that we can emerge stronger and can support our researchers to thrive. We also want to reflect on what the extraordinary success of research and innovation in addressing COVID-19 tells us about how we can tackle the other major global challenges that confront us. These challenges are reflected in the 4 overarching UCD strategic themes. These are creating a sustainable global society, transforming through digital technology, building a healthy world, and empowering humanity. These 4 themes depend centrally on the advances that come through research and innovation, and under this strategy, we will support our researchers to work in partnerships and across disciplines to address them. We have an extraordinary network of achievement within and across these themes in UCD, and we will advance these in a unified manner over the course of the strategy. There are 4 pillars then to shaping the future. The first 2 are excellence and impact, and we will deliver both of these at a scale that allows us to make a difference in areas of national and global significance. We will emphasise excellent and impactful research and innovation within and across our disciplines, and we will ensure in particular that our early stage researchers, including the PhD students and postdoctoral researchers who are so important to us, are supported to develop these qualities in their research. We will seek out and develop partnerships that enable excellent research and innovation and that can deliver breakthrough impact. This will include increased emphasis on international partnerships, including those with our great partners in the UK and the EU. And in relation to the latter, we'll have a special focus on success in the new European funding framework, Horizon Europe. We will grow our ability to identify, foster and communicate our research impact and to engage with the public for mutual learning. We will grow, support and showcase our areas of strength, scale and global relevance, aligning with the 4 strategic themes of UCD. And these include example areas such as cancer, personalised medicine, infectious diseases, migration, food integrity, quantum technologies, digital humanities, space and earth observation, and many, many more. Where we have outstanding researchers coming together in areas such as these with a clear and ambitious goal and supportive partners, we will support them to build success. We will also ensure that our research and innovation has a positive and lasting impact on our students and develops a pipeline of outstanding talent at all levels. We will deliver this excellence and impact through the other pillars of the strategy by investing in our people and providing a culture and environment in which they are supported to deliver on their potential and their ambitions. Our research community of new and existing faculty, researchers and professional support staff represents an outstanding resource for research, scholarship and impact. By driving excellence and optimising our support structures and services, we will ensure that our people are supported to reach their full potential within UCD, delivering excellence and impact, enhancing the university and its reputation, and supporting a talent pipeline for society and the economy. A particular area of focus within this strategy will be our research culture and practices. We seek excellence not only in what we deliver through our research and innovation, but in how we deliver it. Our research culture will fully reflect UCD's values, and this will be clear to every member of our research community with the strong and visible support of our research leadership at all levels. We also recognise that research practices have radically changed during the pandemic and that some of these changes will persist. We will examine and adapt our research practices to reflect new opportunities and changed circumstances and to support our commitment to sustainability. So to discuss what all of this means in practice, we now have 2 panel discussions. The first of these will focus on our people and on our research culture. And the speakers are researchers with a particular expertise in and commitment to these pillars of our strategy. The panel is chaired by Professor Grace Mulcahy, who's UCD Research Integrity Officer, and is developing a very ambitious programme in support of a positive research culture across the university. Over to you, Grace.
So you're very welcome, everybody, and thank you for the introduction, Orla. We have a great panel here today to discuss research culture and environment. We have Abeba Berhan, who's a PhD student in cognitive science in UCD Computer Science and LERO, and her work is on bias in artificial intelligence. She's also currently an intern at DeepMind. We also have Cormac Taylor, who is well known to many of you as a full professor in the UCD School of Medicine, an eminent researcher in the area of gene expression and hypoxia, and also a recipient of the UCD of the Nature Mentorship Award, beg your pardon, in 2014. Finally, we have Maria Bagramian, who's Professor of American Philosophy in UCD, and she is coordinator and leader of the Peritia project, which is about trust in experts. So I'd like to start off our panel discussion today with you, Abeba, and I will ask you first about the culture and environment of a university. And we know that this has a huge influence on the success of its people. Can you discuss how you think systems that are ostensibly designed to be neutral can contain biases that can marginalize individuals and groups, and what can be done to address this?
Thank you, Grace. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here on this panel with everybody else. Culture and environments do influence, that's an obvious fact, do influence research excellence. And environments and ecology that seems neutral or that seems, just normal for some is in fact othering for or uncomfortable for others. And my go-to great example is from Sarah Ahmed, one of my favorite Black feminist scholars. She describes how an environment that seems neutral or comfortable for others might be otherwise for other people. So she gives an example of, imagine you are, a senior professor that has been holding an academic position for, say, over 30 years. You go into your office, you have your nice couch, you go sit on it and you do your work every day. And then over time, that couch kind of takes the shape of your body and it's so comfortable for you. And someone else comes and sits down at that couch and says, this couch is uncomfortable. It's really difficult for you to see or to understand how, that could be otherwise. So, spaces that we find that some people find comfortable are, we have to constantly question whose couch is it we are sitting on. And the academic hierarchy is really built on power asymmetries and these, difficult dynamics. We have, society has this idea of what an intellectual looks like, who is capable of doing excellent research, and all those. So these are, if you don't fit that stereotype, that imagined or constructed vision of what an intellectual looks like, if the environment doesn't provide that, it's going to be really difficult for those that don't fit certain stereotypes. And the environment can be changed gradually. So for example, in UCD and DCU, I know for a fact that there has been a campaign to put women on walls. I know also in the School of Philosophy, Maria Bagramian here has tried to make the philosophy department much more welcoming by putting up posters of women philosophers. That I myself found that really helpful when I was doing my studies there with Maria. So these gradual change, step by step, changing the ecology, changing the environment, but not just a shallow change, but also real change of the ecology and the environment is important to welcoming all these kind of cast out images or voices.
Very good. And Abeba, can you just tell us now, as somebody who is doing a PhD in an academic institution, but also interning in DeepMind, are there differences you would like to point out between academic research and research in a non-academic environment?
As an intern at DeepMind, a lot of what DeepMind, any tech industry does is private and confidential. So I will not be able to disclose that much, but I can say that, when you are a certain identity, when you embody a certain embodiment, whether it's academia or industry, when there is a socially formed stereotype, wherever you go, there always are, very nuanced, seemingly invisible to other people, but not to me, ways that you realize you don't fit there, or you are not welcome, or you don't fit a certain type of, a researcher or an intellectual. So those do exist in both environments.
Okay, thanks very much, Abeba. And I'll pass now perhaps to Cormac. And Cormac, we know that mentorship can have a huge influence on the development of researchers and how they can succeed or not succeed in their career. And we've been focusing on mentorship very much in the UCD research strategy. And clearly you're somebody who has enormous skills as a mentor, being the recipient of the Nature Mentorship Award. So how would you argue that our universities and our academic institutions should do to enhance mentorship and improve the research culture as a result?
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, I mean, I'll cut to the chase. First of all, in terms of your first point, I do believe mentorship is hugely important, both for the integrity and the reputation and the legacy of the university and of us as individual academics. So whether it be the mentorship of undergraduate students, postgraduates, postdoctoral fellows, or indeed peers within the faculty, I think that an effective environment which promotes and supports a high degree of mentorship is really important. On an individual basis, and maybe you get to a certain age, you start to realize that in fact your greatest legacy is going to be not the papers you publish or the grants you get or the books you write, but the people that you train. And I really truly believe that mentorship is really a great privilege, but also a great opportunity for you to do high quality work. I would like to say at the outset as well that I think the diversity and including diverse inputs into research environment is hugely a huge contributor to mentorship, as is alluded to earlier on by Abeba. And I do think it's really important to remember that the legacy, the people that you mentor, will last far beyond the funding cycle of a grant or the lifespan of a paper or book. So I think if we can communicate that, particularly to young faculty who are coming in and taking on research positions, give them the wisdom of age and tell them in 30 or 40 years, this is what's going to matter, then I think we can start to change this culture where mentorship is more appreciated, because I do believe that it is one of the most underrated qualities in research. We talk about people's, it's almost inverse. The amount of money people bring in is most important, to what they publish is second important, and secondary importance, and the people they mentor the mentorship role seems to be really, in my opinion, underrated. Because I would consider mentorship to be one of the greatest privileges that I've had in terms of being lucky enough to get an academic position. Particularly, I think about postgraduate students and postdocs who really give up 3 to 4 to 5 years of their lives to be mentored by you as an individual. So I think that underlies the solemn responsibility that we should all take on. And it's about the person, it's about the mentee, it's not about the CV of the mentor, as it were. I will say just one final point, and that is that we talk in the age of COVID about contagious things. Good mentorship is it's probably the most contagious condition known to man. Second, possibly only to bad mentorship. So I think it's important to remember that if we ingrain a culture of good mentorship in the university, it will pay and pay and pay and keep paying. If we don't, we run the opposite risk of a decaying culture where mentorship is not valued.
And I know, Cormac, you said it's contagious, but are there specific things we could do to really encourage people to be good mentors? So we're all used to peer review and experts reviewing our applications and papers. But what about the idea of 360 review? So the mentees would evaluate how good their mentors were at supporting them. Is that something you think would be useful?
Well, absolutely, yes. I would fully agree with that. I think that the reputation of a individual academic, a senior academic who has responsibility for postgraduate students, postdoctoral fellows, but also faculty, should be subject to review by those people. They're the people who know best how somebody is performing, and I don't think any academic should be afraid of receiving that information. I think it's kind of strange in some ways that, and I think particularly in terms of research leadership, you know, you need a license to own a dog in this country, but you don't need a license to train a PhD student to give 4 years of their lives to you. So I think that the actual training of young faculty is really important. UCD is quite unique in this, in that it runs a program for training new faculty in the, so I'll use the word art, but in the skill, if you like, of research mentorship. And I think that's a really important way to change the culture a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of, although, as you said, I did receive one, which was lovely to receive an award. But I think awards can be quite isolating. Lots of people mentor in different ways, and it's a difficult thing to measure in terms of awards, but I think it's something that we can reward, if you like, in the promotion process. So I think that we need to develop ways, and you gave a very good example of it there with the 360 evaluations, to evaluate people's mentorship skills and contributions, and give them value and promote people who are demonstrating good mentorship. But we also need to identify people who are not doing doing a high quality mentoring, and help them and train them. It is something that can be to some degree trained. And one of the things finally that I would do, and this might come up later on in the discussion as well, is I think we need to maybe change the focus of what we value as high quality research, or broaden the focus. And it's not just about income and grants that are accumulated. It's more about the outputs that go from that grant. And I include very much the trainees and the mentees that evolve out of a research program that really shows a true class and excellence, and will be, as I've said, vital to the legacy of the university as well as its reputation.
Fantastic, really powerful stuff there, and thoughts, Cormac. Thanks so much for that. I move now to Maria. And Maria, we know that modern research often requires collaboration internationally and large groups of people to work together. We also know that it's very important that the public trusts our research, and that trust in experts is a big topic, for example, during the pandemic. How do you think our research culture and trust within research teams and between researchers affects how the public perceives the trustworthiness of our research?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. And I must start by saying how much I agree with everything that has been said, both a climate of diversity and equality, and also the need for mentorship. When it comes to trust, there are well-known markers for trust and trustworthiness in research. Track record of genuine expertise established through peer-reviewed and other kinds of prestigious publications, indications of esteem among peers, reputation in general in academic circles. These are well-established markers, but in addition, there are these epistemic and moral values that go into making for a good and trustworthy researcher. Values such as transparency, such as in honesty, integrity, truthfulness, showing that one's research is not colored by one's political or personal interest. These markers of trustworthiness, both in terms of expertise and the moral and epistemic values, apply to researchers when they are collaborating with each other, and also for the need to have the public's trust in conducting our research. Universities and the researchers who work in these universities should be aware of both sets of values. Our trustworthiness is not established only because of our publication records, but also additional factors, such as our attempts to show that we have integrity and honesty and transparency through openness and accountability. In my own research project, Baritia, we talk a lot about establishing a climate of trust. A climate of trust not just in politics or in banking or in media, but also in research and among scientists. So one essential element of that climate of trust is to show that we have goodwill towards those who we expect to trust us. So in case of universities, it's the general public, the students, the younger researchers who we are mentoring, as well as the politicians or the civil servants who we might wish to influence in terms of our expert advice. So goodwill is a marker of trustworthiness that applies not only in research among the scientists working together, but also, and maybe more importantly, towards the general public.
Thank you very much, Maria. Again, profound thoughts there. I'm going to ask each of you in turn now to respond succinctly, if you can, to a question which keeps me up at night sometimes. And that's, we know that research by its nature is a very competitive process. We're competing for funding, for publications, we are under scrutiny and so on for our research results. But we know also, as we've rehearsed here today, that collegiality is also really important among research communities, and a spirit of positive mentorship, good constructive criticism and development of the next generation. Do you think that we have an appropriate balance at the moment in our research ecosystem between competition and collegiality? How can we synergize those two? And is there one thing you can suggest for any part of the research ecosystem? And I'm talking here about the funders, the publishers, the organizations, the individuals that could maybe optimize that balance. So no pressure now, but maybe we'll go to Cormac and then Abeba and then Maria to talk about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll be as succinct as possible, Grace, as you said. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, we need to broaden our definition of high quality research to include more difficult things to measure, such as the impact of work in terms of academic citations, for example. I think in some ways we can return to some of the more traditional uses of valuing academic research in terms of not just the impact factor of the journal in which we publish our work, which I do not think is a great measure of quality, but the number of times a paper is cited. Because the reality is it sometimes takes years or even decades before we know the true impact of research. And we like to think of it a little bit too much, I think, in terms of the quick fix, which is the economically measurable fix. So I think that is important. I think if we can communicate to our people through mentorship, I would say, and I really truly believe what I'm going to say now, and it's absolutely something that I think we need to communicate, particularly to younger faculty who've grown up in this really intensely competitive environment, and that is that as an institution, there's not a limited number of good things that can happen. And in fact, it's the opposite. If good things happen to your colleagues, it tends to raise it's the tide that raises all boats. So if we can communicate that message, I think we'd make a great improvement.
Very good. Thanks, Cormac. And Abeba, in 1 minute, one thing we can do to enhance collegiality?
Yes, I just want to second everything Cormac said, and I will just add one line. When I started the PhD, someone said to me, everyone here is smart, but be different by being kind. So we have smart everywhere. We have enough smart. We need to focus more on kindness, on compassion, and all the other features that Cormac was pointing out that are really difficult to measure.
Absolutely. And if we can be kind as well as smart, how much better our research would go. So I think we should definitely all hold that thought today. And Maria, the final word goes to you.
So I think competition for scarce resources is an inevitable feature of our research lives. So we need to accept that. But at the same time, remember and accept that collaborative research has proven to be extremely useful. And in order to collaborate, we need to work with our colleagues, to be open to new ideas, to their perspectives, as well as to our own, and to be pluralistic in our approaches. And once we accept that fact of collaboration, then competitiveness loses its sting. And I like to add two more factors at individual level. One is intellectual humility, and the other one is to try and accept our fallibility as researchers. Every truth that we come up with in 100 years or so, as my favorite philosopher Hilary Putnam said, is going to be proven to be wrong. So we are just going to be able to come up with the best ideas now, not the last word. And reminding ourselves of this humbleness in intellectual matters, I think can help to make us better researchers as well as better human beings.
Thank you very much, Maria. So with that, those three thoughts then about intellectual humility, kindness, and the key importance of mentorship, I think we'll conclude today's discussion, and I'll hand you back now to Orla. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, and thanks also to Abeba, Cormac and Maria. That was a terrific discussion. If we had more time, I'd love to have heard much more. But the good news is that this broader conversation will be continuing, both within UCD and with the many stakeholders who share our commitment to this agenda. As we now look to implement the strategy, we have a number of initiatives about to commence in support of our culture, our people, and our research environment. Grace and her team will be rolling out a very ambitious programme to deliver a research culture that reflects and indeed advances best practice. And we will be delivering supports and investment in related areas such as data management and open access. We're initiating a major new research leadership development programme, along with significant enhancements to our research environment. These will include online supports that we hope will make the management of research much more straightforward, major facilities such as the new AgTech Innovation Centre on Lyons Farm, and the return of the €10 million EQUIP programme of UCD investment in our research equipment. Our next panel then will discuss how under the new strategy we will deliver excellence and impact. It includes two UCD researchers who have done just that in their own research, along with a colleague from one of our key international partners, recognising the role of these international partnerships in delivering on the strategy. The panel will be chaired by Tom Flanagan, UCD Director of Enterprise and Commercialisation. So over to you, Tom.
Okay, thank you very much, Orla, and I'm delighted to welcome everybody to this panel session. Today we have with us on the panel, we have Dr. Paul Dodd, who's the Associate Vice Chancellor for Interdisciplinary Research and Strategic Initiatives at UC Davis in California, and he oversees 20 different institutions and research centers. He was also formerly with SFI, where he was responsible for the industry collaborative programs, and he ran the different large-scale collaborative research centers and clusters in ICT, life science, and renewable energy, and had a PhD from Queen's University in research in nanoscale magnetic materials. I'd also like to welcome Professor Catherine Cox, who's the Associate Professor for the School of History at UCD and the Director for the UCD Centre for the History of Medicine, and she's published several different books, including Negotiating Insanity in the Southeast of Ireland, Adolescence in Modern Irish History, Migration, Health and Ethnicity in the Modern World, and her next book is on mental breakdown and the modern prison in England and Ireland, and that's to be published by the Cambridge University Press. And she's also Secretary for the Royal Irish Academic Historical Studies Committee and Deputy Chair for the Irish Committees of Historical Sciences. And more recently, she's won the UCD 2020 Research Impact Case Study. So you're very welcome to the panel. And then Professor Liam Gallagher, who's the Director for the UCD Conway Institute of Biomolecular and Biomedical Research and Professor of cancer biology in the UCD School of Biomolecular and Biomedical Science. And he's also the Deputy Director for Precision Oncology Ireland, which is a large-scale SFI strategic research partnership in oncology that includes 5 academic institutions, 8 companies, and 6 cancer charities. And he co-founded OncoMark, a successful molecular diagnostic company in the cancer area. And he is now founding his second company, which is OncoAssure. He has attracted over 65 million funding in research funding and is a strong advocate for patient involvement in research. So you're all very, very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so let's talk about the new research and innovation strategy for UCD. And let's start with, there's a lot of talk in it about excellence in research and in innovation. So let's start talking about excellence. So if I start with you, Liam, and ask you for students that you would have, that you would be a supervisor for, and then for yourself as well, how do you set the bar of what excellence is in your research area?
For me, excellence is really, I suppose, about the kind of nugget of the idea, and you're, I suppose, creating new information in a specific aspect. So, for example, I work in the cancer research space. Our starting point is really in the area of clinical need. So we're trying to address the clinical need. We try to understand the kind of molecular basis underpinning that disease, and then we use that information to try to, I suppose, come up with new therapeutic options. When I try to identify individuals who can kind of contribute to that, I suppose it's that spark of interest in sciences. That's a starting point.
Mm-hmm. But the excellence bar, I mean, to be excellent in your area, do you have to discover something new, or do you have to invent something new, or how do you define it?
So, like, I suppose when I'm talking about, taking an innovation from discovery, it's, you have to have that original discovery to translate. It's the foundation. So the starting point is excellent research. And in terms of individuals, it's hard to identify, I suppose. It's really, I suppose, that kind of that excitement that an individual has in understanding the world, trying to contribute to ongoing discoveries. That's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah, very good. And Catherine, your perspective from your research area on excellence. Your research area.
Well, I think one way of actually exploring excellence from my point of view would be to actually give an example of as you mentioned, the UCD impact case study, and how excellence sort of featured in that. As you mentioned, the case study came out of a multifaceted research project that's funded by the Wellcome Trust. And in that project, we tried to look at illness, and particularly mental illness, in Irish prisons from the 1830s until today. And that project had both a range of traditional, what would perceive to be traditional academic outputs, so publications, journal articles, books. But we also produced a series of arts-related events that included an award-winning play. So we're drawing from history as well as contemporary research. The research sought to influence public debate on this issue and to change public perceptions of imprisoned people's right to psychiatric services in appropriate settings. And we worked with imprisoned people and current prison staff on these various arts-related events. So excellence, I think, was at the heart of the success of each of these. So first, we fundamentally put together a great academic team with the aim of conducting research. And, we looked at that when we were appointing that team. We looked at where they published, but also their skill sets, and to see whether they had the diverse range of skill sets that we needed, both for academic researchers, but also to do this public engagement work. And crucially, we also in parallel collaborated with quite brilliant artists and theatre groups, as well as advocates and funders. And they had extensive experience of socially engaged work with marginalised people and populations. And they allowed us, by sort of partnering with the right cohorts, we were able to blend historical inquiry with contemporary research and directly involve imprisoned peoples, who then became co-creators of the final productions, and indeed co-authors of their own histories. And that, I think, was at the core of the success of the work, which is very much marked by excellence, but also by innovation and imagination, I guess.
Yeah, no, very good. So you've kind of gone from excellence to impact in that space. And go back to Liam. So I know you've done excellent research, and obviously with publications and everything that you do, but also you've managed to balance that with launching startups, and you're onto your second. So well done and fair play to. How do you balance that excellence in research with impact and translational research as well? How do you balance the focus on those things?
So for me, it's I think the two kind of go hand in hand. I don't think it's really a balancing act per se, because again, you know, as I mentioned before, you have, you know, I'm very interested in translating, you know, research into something that's useful, either for in a clinical context or for wider society. But you know, the starting point really is that kind of nugget of discovery, that kind of invention. But an invention is useless unless you actually bring it forward and actually bring it to a product. And you know, it's different. It's a different type of landscape doing that type of activity. Yeah. And you know, I suppose as scientists, we're commonly not kind of trained in that area. But it's something that I was quite excited about. You know, early on in my career, I was exposed to it, and I suppose that's part of it is really exposing individuals to kind of that cycle of from discovery to execution or product development. It's a different beast. And so, for example,
sorry, I was going to ask you, does it change your perspective on excellence in research when you've gone all the way through with a great invention and you've taken it to market, essentially? Does it change your perspective on your starting point for research?
It does, in a sense that I suppose when you see a lot of research, unfortunately, I suppose a lot of research is, you know, it isn't converted into something that has a downstream use, but at that particular point. But we know that, for example, you know, we're unsure at what particular point that it can be converted. So, for example, even if you look at the kind of the pandemic we're currently kind of faced with, I suppose, you know, people had been working on bat sequences for a variety of different contexts, and that information then can be translated into something useful down the line. So, like in my particular case, we start with a clinical problem or a need where we're looking for better or more personalized cancer treatments. And so our starting point is that clinical question. And really what we try to do is actually focus on excellent science. That's the starting point. And then actually identify some novel finding. And I think that's the difficulty is sometimes, you know, a lot of people, when they're doing a body of scientific research, they don't actually commonly look at the patent literature. You know, they commonly focus on the academic literature. Commonly, a lot of discoveries are actually present in the patent literature before they're actually published in the academic literature. So I suppose the idea for me is trying to convert, you know, the focus for what I do is really converting this information into something that's useful.
Very good, very good. And Paul, what's your perspective on excellence and impact in terms of use?
Yeah, I think they're sort of two sides of the same coin to some extent. I mean, our approach here at UC Davis has been that we certainly collect statistics and measure and encourage, you know, promotion of everything from startup companies to, you know, highly cited publications. So, but what we actually do is we allow, you know, either individuals or at least individual research centers or research units to tell us what the performance indicators are in their area, because it can be quite different. And it's not a one-size-fits-all approach then. It appreciates the diversity of the range of research, which happens at UCD in Belfield as well, and doesn't try to fit them all into the same rubric. But I would say we've specifically focused on encouraging people to develop 5-year strategic plans at a research center or a research institute level. And some of those key performance indicators do include, in some cases, commercial outputs, but in other cases, maybe scientific advances. So really focusing on the discovery element of research, be it, you know, in any field. So I think using a holistic definition of excellence would be my suggestion. And I think that's represented in this strategy actually for UCD.
Yeah, no, it is actually very good, and it's interesting. I think as well, you have international collaboration as a big piece of your role. And I suppose the question from me is, how important is international collaboration in excellence and impact?
I think it's crucial. I mean, you can't claim to be world class unless you know where the benchmark is. So the other thing is, to amplify and maximize your impact as a researcher, you just have to play on a global level. So being connected to other research entities, be they universities or otherwise, internationally, opens up so many opportunities on a very sort of fundamental scientific advancement level. You can drastically increase citation levels. If you have a large cohort of international collaborators, you tend to get a lot more citations from international co-authorship papers than from single individual ones. But in terms of talent pipeline, diversity of ideas, bringing, different approaches together, I think there are so many reasons. And I think particularly why we've had this UCD Squared Alliance now for nearly 8 years between Belfield and California is there's a lot of interactions between these two parts of the globe in terms of foreign direct investment and trade and many other reasons, and a lot of synergy between the kind of priorities and strategic approach that we have at Davis aligns actually very well with UCD. So we think partnerships with leading European universities like UCD is really critically important to our advancement as well. So.
Thanks very much, Paul. That's excellent, interesting. The question then related to that, I suppose, is around what the critical success factors are for great international collaboration. Catherine, you had already talked a little bit about the international collaboration that you have been involved in. What do you think are the critical success factors there?
I think, one thing I'd like to hop in on there is just think about how impact is counted to some extent. Paul mentioned citation factors and joint authors articles. I suppose for historians it's rather different because of course historians are indicator of excellence, and indeed indication that we're able to do our jobs is the publication of a book, of a monograph, and often they're so publications. The moving into the space of co-authorship is relatively new within our discipline, and it's a very fruitful way of writing. Indeed, I've done it myself, but it's not the benchmark as it were. The benchmark is actually co-authorship, and often co-authorship of a book. So it's a slightly different. So I totally welcome the emphasis in the strategy on the diversity of approaches to achieve impact and excellence in that sense. Sorry, you asked me about...
Just about the critical success factor. Or anybody join in on what you think are one or two of the critical success factors of really good international collaboration?
I think one key thing is making sure that you, as I said, that you're working with people who are excellent, and I think Paul picked that up as well, that are leaders in their field. And I think that's very, very important. Another thing I think that's very helpful is that it's a bottom-up process. Often those partnerships are actually, and I think the pandemic has reminded us of this, often those partnerships are formed in those informal chats at conferences, at networking systems, and that's how we actually do a lot of that bottom-up excellent research. And I think we really are missing that at the moment, as good as it may be.
Yeah, very good. Any other thoughts on the critical success factors?
Yeah, I think creating a framework, so I totally agree with Catherine's point that it has to be individual investigator to investigator synergies that spark the collaboration, but sometimes it's helpful to have some sort of framework. So whether that's, alignment between federal or national funding agencies, say SFI, NSF, and NIH, that's helpful within the context of US-Ireland engagement and partnership, certainly, but also at the university level, trying to enable mechanisms where people have that conduit to talk to each other on a frequent basis and then step out of the way. So it's not sort of designing what should the collaborative focus be, but just enabling, I think, the environment to make it happen.
Yeah, very good. And Liam, I know, sorry, you might...
Yeah, I suppose I was just going to come in there. It's really about network building. I probably might comment on it later, but It's building that kind of network of contacts over many years, that sometimes you build that relationship and you may tap into that relationship 5-10 years down the track. And
there's a strong call. Yeah, sorry, there's a strong call as well in the strategy around EU and North-South collaboration. Is that something that that you see opportunities in, Liam?
Yeah, particularly in my field, but like across different fields. Like for me, international collaboration is critical for advancement of science. If we just again take my field as an example, there is the EU Beating Cancer Plan was recently launched. They're putting 4 billion into this, not only for research, but also kind of integration of care. This continuum between research and care is critical, and that intersection. And that's really providing a roadmap for interinstitutional collaboration and fast tracking innovations from academia into practice.
Yeah,
I think Ireland can, and particularly UCD, can play a key role here. Like, we have a very good track record in participating in those types of programs and leading on these types of programs. And particularly in Northern Ireland, I think there's a big opportunity. I think there's some discussion about potentially, all island research centres. It's a particular area that I'm focused on at the moment. So I'm working with some colleagues of mine to establish an all island cancer research institute. And the idea behind this is really to provide the glue and connect the researchers both in Northern Ireland and Ireland across common themes in the cancer space.
Very good. That sounds really interesting and exciting as well. In terms of interdisciplinary research as well, that's also called out. Are there aspects that are particularly attractive to you, Catherine?
Gosh, yes, there's lots of exciting opportunities, I think. And I think COVID has certainly demonstrated, that medical science can achieve quite amazing things in a short term, short time span. But I think it's also really reminded us of the importance of social and cultural responses to crises. So I think projects or initiatives and programs of research that really include meaningful interdisciplinary approaches and which incorporate a variety of methodological training, I think has really great potential for going to the future. And I think a nice example of that's out there at the moment, to go back to the point of international collaboration, is the collaboration between the Irish Research Council and the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council. And they are co-funding an initiative to support digital humanities. And I think in this regard, COVID will almost certainly emphasize, or certainly that funding will sort of support an emphasis that's emerged on the digital element to so much of our research currently and in the future. And I think as well, as mentioned earlier, that COVID has really emphasized the importance of thinking globally and has really reminded us, if we had forgotten, of how interconnected our world is. So again, it reinforces not only interdisciplinary collaboration, but also cross-cutting interdisciplinary areas such as the medical humanities or such as One Health, which I think are really, really important fields and will expand as we go forward.
Very good, very interesting, yeah. And let me just, before we wrap up, let me just ask you each, Liam, start with you. What's particularly exciting about this new research strategy, research and innovation strategy for you?
Yeah, so what excites me about the strategy, UCD strategy at the moment, is this kind of building towards large-scale initiatives. For example, in my space, building a healthy world. And I suppose it really paves the way for greater opportunities for intersection across disciplines.
Yeah.
Very good. And Catherine, most exciting thing about the new strategy?
I think something I find particularly exciting about the strategy is, yes, the emphasis on excellence is very much welcome, but also excellence in how we deliver our research and how we work as researchers. I think that's really, really welcome. And I'm very happy to see that emphasis on it.
Very good. And Paul, let me ask you the harder question, which is, what do you think the challenges will be for us to achieve that strategy?
So post-pandemic, I think there are likely to be quite a few challenges in the short term obviously our mobility as research communities to exchange people has been drastically reduced. Now we have, through platforms like Zoom and others, been able to, I think, surprise ourselves at how much can actually be done remotely. But eventually you need that person-to-person interaction. You need to be able to access facilities. You need to be able to spend time with people in person, I think. I worry a little bit that governments' availability to invest in R&D is certainly going to be under pressure in most jurisdictions, at least. Although I think in both Ireland and the US, the statements from the respective governments have been actually very positive in this sense in terms of growing research funding opportunities. But I think it's going to take a while for the new normal to emerge, so that we can really clearly see what those opportunities are. So I would foresee maybe some short-term uncertainty, but hopefully having a strong strategy like the one that we're talking about here today will plot a roadmap towards success over, maybe a few years.
Great, thanks very much, Paul. Thanks very much, Liam and Catherine. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you all very much for joining us today, and best of luck in your research careers and your future endeavors. And back over to you, Orla. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks to Paul, Catherine and Liam. Again, this was just the start of the much broader discussion that we will be having across the university over the period of the strategy. And thank you all very much for joining us today. I look forward to working with all of you, UCD colleagues, as well as our partners and stakeholders, to deliver success under this strategy. We will now start our detailed implementation plan in support of the strategy, which will include digital transformation of our supports for research and innovation, enhanced facilities, development programs, support for major partnerships and big thematic campaigns, and specific initiatives to advance and embed a positive research culture. You can find a copy of the strategy document on our new research website, also launched today. You will also find there details of our research and our researchers, and the research supports that we offer, including the new Research Impact Toolkit launched this week. And I hope finally that before too long, we will be together again on our lovely campus to discuss and advance our research and innovation plans together. Thank you again, and take care.